Nick's not here right now, so if I want to play some board games, I better use an app. What's up, everybody? My name is Mike. I'm one half of the brothers Murph, and this is my mom's old iPad, which served as a wonderful co-host. And what I'm going to be talking about today is board game apps. Now, I am a pretty big fan of board game apps. Nick does not participate in board game apps as much, but I play a lot of them and stuff because I got to keep myself distracted every minute of the day. What better way to do that than with board games? So I'm here to talk about my top 10 favorite board game apps. Let's get it. So number 10 is a game called Dragon Castle that has an app that's really cool. Dragon Castle is a beautiful game. I'm talking about the IRL version where it's kind of based off Mahjong, has these thick, awesome tiles that you're collecting from this kind of central board and then putting onto your own player board to you kind of want to stave off making too large of a group, but at the right time you want to connect several disparate groups to make one humongous group and consolidate those tiles, which then flip down. That allows you to then build on top of and earn your main hit of points. It's a beautiful game that's very satisfying to play in real life, and the app is also really beautiful and satisfying to play. And the reason it makes my app list is because I love playing this game for real, but it's a bit of a setup because you have to take all those tiles, you got to put them all face up, and you got to arrange them in a certain way into the middle board to then play. It's kind of a lot. And then also when you go to flip over all your tiles and make those groups, you have to flip them all down. And as you build, you start to have kind of like little nooks and crannies. And if you got big sausage fingers, it's hard to get those tiles and flip them without knocking stuff over. So it's a little bit fiddly. I am down to deal with those two things, but if I play in the app, I can get right into the game and it does all of those fiddly bits in a very quick, easy manner while maintaining the same kind of atmosphere that I enjoy from Dragon Castle. So that's why it makes my list at number 10. So my number 9 is Ticket to Ride, and it's many iterations, a lot of which are available in the same app. So I have this one on Steam, and the reason I really like Ticket to Ride digital is that it's really fun and easy to play. It's just a kind of a quick, easy breezy game that you can sort of play over and over. And with the app, it gives me the opportunity to now have tried so many of the different versions of Ticket to Ride. Many versions that if I was to buy them all in person would cost me quite a bit, but now I can buy these expansions for like $4 a pop or something. It's really kind of affordable. And so I've bought, I think, the lot of them just simply so I can have a chance to try them all at the low price of like what would have been like 1 or 2 just copies of physical Ticket to Ride. I can try all these different versions. So there's just a plethora of ways to make train routes. It's very satisfying and easy to play. That game is super simple in real life. You're either taking some cards, playing some cards, getting some new destinations, and then the various different versions of the game add their own little twist to that. So it gets really easy to kind of explore the greater Ticket to Ride world in the digital space. And that's something that I've really enjoyed doing. I've done streams where I just say like, name a type of Ticket to Ride, and I'll do this version and learn how France works, where you're actually creating the routes and stuff like that. So that's been really awesome because I've always wanted to play all those versions of Ticket to Ride, and it wasn't until the app that I was able to truly kind of get into doing that. That's why it's on my list. Number 8 is Potion Explosion. Now this game is super duper fun in real life, and in real life it has a ton of kind of table presence and satisfaction because you have this kind of many-tiered tray of marbles that you're pulling marbles out of. They come clacking together and you get to collect those marbles and stuff like that. So the reason the digital version goes toe-to-toe with that, which would be hard because you can't replicate the tactile nature of Potion Explosion in the app. But what the app does really well is it's just beautifully animated. It's something that for me is really fun to see the way the potions, when you pop one off to use it, it creates this cool colorful cloud and everything. Everything just kind of has like a little bit of motion to it and sparkle. It's one that I like playing against my wife a lot. We'll play Potion Explosion over and over again against each other and stuff. We'll go back and forth. So it's just a really infinitely playable, really well used. It uses the kind of portrait style on your phone or your device really well, I feel like. And it's just easy to kind of understand and see everything. It's easy to kind of toggle around. So that for me is like, I was just always impressed at how much I am down to play Potion Explosion, not in real life, because that marble tactile, sensation of playing that game for real is hard to beat. Now this game, of course, the digital version has a much easier setup. The setup for a Potion Explosion is wonky and frustrating. So that's another thing that makes it nice that the game can just instantly start. You select which potions you want. It takes care of all the shuffling and setup for you. then the animations and stuff just really take it next level. It's very easy to use. That's why it's on my list. Number 7 makes my list because it's just super duper infinitely replayable, and that's Cartographers. It's a Cartographers app which just allows you to kind of randomize the scoring opportunities that you have available to you, and then you can kind of go through and draw cards and place your little tiles and stuff. It does a really good job, and once you click on, if you have to place like a village in this certain shape or whatever, once I push one little square down, it kind of gives you what legal options you have available and also shows you where in general you can legally place. So you'll know right away if you don't have a place to play legally, it will be very clear. So it makes it nice and easy to use. It's very satisfying as you see things kind of get built out and everything. And this is just one that I can just play around, okay, reload it and play it again and play it again and play it again. And Cartographers is kind of a magical game in general, and that, like, it doesn't really wear out to me. Like, I can just sort of always play that game. So the app is very nice for that because you can just sort of load it up. They do like weekly challenges where you'll have the same scoring cards. They will not change. The order won't change. And so throughout the week, the only thing that might be changing is the order of the exploration cards, which things you get to play, and you try to maximize your score. And I think even a version you can play where everything is static the whole week, the scoring, the order of the cards. And so then you get to really try to think of like, what is the best, actually the best way to play this version of the game? If the cards came out in this order, what is the best way to play that game? Something I think is super duper interesting. And again, that game is just breezy. It works quick in the app. It gives you, you're playing a solo game, and it's just really, really stinking replayable. And that's what keeps me coming back to it. Number 6 is Ascension. This is a just straight up deck building game. There is also Dominion now available, and I would just lump this in the same kind of category, Ascension / Dominion. These games, Ascension I like better because of the fantasy theming and stuff. Ascension's a game where you have a row of cards. You have some pretty kind of basic starter cards, some that give you a little bit of attack, other ones that give you a bit of influence or your money in the game in order to buy more cards. And the attack is used to kind of fight monsters that are in the car roads, which sort of act like buying cards. You're going to dismiss them, but to get different effects and things like that. And as you go through the game, you're just trying to earn the most points that you can. The cards are usually worth points. You can play cards that have different effects that allow you to collect these gems, which time out the game and also give you points and things. And you can just build ridiculous combinations and synergies with these cards. Now, the reason something like Ascension works for me is Ascension or Dominion are really kind of built on having lots of different expansions. Most of the time, ones that you will choose this expansion or that expansion or cards from this set and that set and put them in. Now, that's cool for variety's sake, but in real life, that is a logistical nightmare if you have a ton of different sets to separate things back out, put them into their places, reshuffle things together to play this particular game or whatever it takes. It's just a lot of setup and doing things. And this, I can just toggle on this expansion, that expansion, this thing, go. And I can just get off and running, and I don't have to worry about setting out the right markets and things like that for the cards. So it makes life really easy. And it's just fun to try this expansion, toggle it back off. I don't want to play that this time, and just play a game. And again, you can kind of play over and over, and I don't have to do all of the kind of work of separating out cards and getting things in an organized manner, which of course you want to do in real life, because if you don't, you could lose your way completely and never really make sense of it, or it becomes too big of a task. Or at least to me, it seems like it could become too big of a task. So with the app, I can just click a button and add things in, take things out at my leisure, which makes things really, really cool. And with such a straight up kind of deck building game where it's just about buy cards, buy better cards, use those cards to get better actions, to buy better cards and use better cards, I like how fast you can play those games because I just want to get in, build up my little thing, and then get out. So Ascension makes my list. You could put that as Dominion, which is a similar kind of straight up deck building game with lots of expansions and stuff like that. Either one I think works really well in the digital form. So number 5 is a game that got me through the early parts of COVID because we were still able to play games digitally from afar. This is Charterstone. This is a legacy game by Stonemaier Games, which is really kind of fun to play, where you're sort of all the players involved are building out this village and introducing new building types, which would normally be stickered onto the board in your real life version of the game. That gives people things to go to. You're collecting resources, transferring resources into different things, and each kind of game gives you little rules that change and stuff like that. Kind of very classic legacy game things, which is kind of cool because the Charterstone at the end, you have a custom version of this game that you could play if you wanted to. It's all kind of worker placement stuff. So the thing that we enjoyed was we had a chance to play this in the early days of COVID. None of us were getting together physically, but a routine game night that I have, we were able to play games digitally on Monday nights, or Sunday nights rather. And it was really cool to have something to do and to be able to play something like a legacy game, which ideally you have the same group every time. They say you can like swap people in and out, but they wouldn't have any idea what's going on. It just doesn't really work. Let's be honest with ourselves. Like, you want the same group of people. That's the only way it truly works. And just having a digital way to kind of gather and play and pick up where we left off, and things in the rule book that had changed were easier to reference and quickly hover over something that gives you the layout of like how this works. Things like that made it really doable, and we were able to play it kind of week in and week out, which is the best kind of way to play those games, and it was really fun. It was so fun that I actually went back and reloaded my own new campaign, but I didn't have folks that I was playing with, so I just played against a bunch of computer characters, which I'm like, okay, I'm not going to like solo a legacy game on my own week in and week out, but I'll go and play through the digital one. I can play this game and explore stuff and just play against AI characters, which I don't mind doing. So that was awesome that like now this big legacy game is a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit easier to play if you don't have that dedicated game group. And that was something that, especially given the time that we decided to play that, was really needed and gave me some of that socialization that we were craving for. So Charterstone has a soft spot in my heart. I think it works really well in the digital space, and I am down to like reload it and play it. Whereas I'm never going to rebuy a legacy game and like start that again, but I'll redo the app version, no problem. So number 4 is on our list because when I heard this game getting announced, I got rid of my physical copy of the game because I knew I was going to want to play the digital version. This is Root. Root is a really interesting, to me, tough because it's an aggressive war game featuring cute animals and stuff, but it is kind of a brutal, gotta be aggressive, like war game. You got to be brutal in it. And for me, what kind of softened this up is that a couple things. One, you really want to play 3 or 4 player. You want to play the full player count to get a big complement of different factions, because that's what I think is really interesting is when they're over there doing this thing, because the game is very asymmetric. They're doing this whole thing. These people are doing this weird other thing. And it's more fun the more kind of people you have fighting and duking it out for, you know, for control of the forest. So I knew that it was going to be tough because we typically play games 2-player. And also, it's hard to get into and learn this game well because every faction is so different. There is not really, if you know how to play the cats, you're going to know how to play the Woodland Alliance. Like, no, you will not. They do not function at all the same. The only thing they have in common is that we're all trying to earn points, but how you get those points is very different. So that's tough to like roll up into a game night and not have any idea how the lizard cult works, and you sit down and you're kind of lost. And if you're playing a game with other people who know Root, you are going to get stomped into the ground. I guarantee it. And that always kind of stopped me from wanting to play, because I'm like, I don't play this often enough. I don't play this at the player count enough to like interact with this game the way it's meant to be interacted with. But the app makes that a lot easier to do, because number one, I can always play a 4-player game because I can just play against computer characters. That's totally sweet. You can choose different difficulty levels if you want to sort of learn and get better and then up the difficulty. And every faction comes with their own set of tutorials. So now if you really want to learn how the Eerie, the kind of bird folk work, I can just play as them through a tutorial that takes me through them specifically, which is such a nice way to learn how different factions tick, and then go through and play some games and try it all out and see what you can learn, and maybe go back to the tutorial if something still isn't clear or what have you. I have this way to get like dedicated specific tutorials for the factions, which I thought was so smart, so smart for this kind of game. And now that I play the app, I feel a little bit more confident if I was to go play the physical game, because I sort of know how things work and stuff like that. It'll be much easier for me to do, won't be such a daunting task. So I think this actually makes it more playable, and that's got me excited. So Root, I knew I was going to be excited for, and it did not disappoint, and so that is why it's on my list. So number 3 is the Ganz Clever, Doppel So Clever, Clever Hawk Dry series of games. These are roll and write games. I've only ever played one of them one time in person, and then the app is just infinitely better. Ganz, Schön, Clever and stuff is a straight up roll some dice, allocate those dice to different areas to score points. And the different areas that are pertain to the colors of dice function differently in how they work and what allows you to place dice when and things like that. It's just like numbers and puzzle. There's no theme. It doesn't try to have one. And I think it works best in a solo experience. So when they came out with the app for Ganz, Schön, Clever, the first one, and they all function similarly in terms of drafting dice and putting them into different areas, although those areas work very different. This is a game in this series of games that are just infinitely replayable because that hunt for the high score is so alluring. You just want that high score so bad. And once you get like a decent score, ooh, that's exciting. And then you can't quite replicate it and trying to learn like when you should focus on certain areas of the boards and when you should invest your energy and how to use that white die, which can be a wild and things like that. It's just so fun to go game after game after game. And I think the fact that it isn't a highly thematic experience is actually useful because you can just sort of think about the numbers and stuff like that. This is one that I think you can play in perpetuity forever and ever and ever. And all the versions are just interesting twists on stuff. I think there's a new one coming and I'm super excited for that. I will always get these. They're a couple bucks and it's just endless entertainment, especially Ganz, Schön, Clever, the first one I've played hundreds and hundreds of times. And it's just purely on the list because of that. I just think it's super playable, but it certainly is not the most thematic experience. But I don't even hate it for that. I think that actually is an ally in this case because I can just play it again and again and crunch out on numbers. And I think that's quite fun. So number 2, I think, is my most played board game app of all time, which is impressive because this is not a small game. This is Through the Ages. Through the Ages is a big civilization-themed card game, really, where you are going to be moving through different eras of time, kind of from the time of antiquity to the modern day, by playing these different cards, which are going to boost up various engines. You're working on different engine buildings, so you can build up in different areas like food, which is going to help you grow your population and maintain the happiness of your people, lest they go hungry and you start losing points. You can get these kind of building materials like stone, and as the game goes, you start with stone and then iron and things like that because you're, again, progressing through time. Same thing with the food. You get like agriculture and all that jazz. There's also knowledge, which helps you develop new technologies through kind of scientific pursuits, and then culture, which is your victory points. So you are playing out different cards to create buildings, put your population to work on those buildings to start generating all those various types of resources, those various types of income. Now, the reason this game works really, really well in the digital space is that this game in real life is a ton of bookkeeping because you have to figure out how much knowledge do you produce, how much resources do you produce. There's things where the upper level of buildings use 1 token, but that 1 token counts as 3 of this resource. So you have to kind of do math within the math. There's food, but your population eats food. So I actually produce 8, but I'm consuming 4, so I get 4. And again, the tokens and the way the tokens work, you might run out of tokens. There's just a lot of little things like that that you have to track and monitor and bookkeep. And in real life, it's a super annoying process. But in an app, it does all the calculations for you, and what it does is gives you your numbers. This is what you have to work with. That's what it has to work with. And it takes care of which tokens get allocated and moved and stuff like that for you. You still have to deal with all the same punishments and things that you might in the game and the management, but you don't have to do the math part, which is not, I think, particularly interesting or thematic. So that makes this game so much more playable. And this is a big game. There's lots of card kind of combinations and synergies to explore. What areas do you go super heavy military? It's kind of its own resource and try to, be an aggressor against your opponents. There's a lot to explore, and the app just makes it easier to get into. You can click on every single card, which pulls up a description of what it does, how it works. It makes it something very big and daunting and brings it into something that is easier to understand. So I have played hundreds of games of this, and I don't know if I ever would have gotten very far if I only had the real life version in front of me to play with. I'm only really interested in playing with the app. because I just know from other people's stories how much easier it is to play with. So I'm like, why play a harder version of the same thing? This is so satisfying. They now have the expansion for this game in there, which switches up your leaders and the types of wonders of the world that you can build. It's an awesome Civ-themed board game if you like civilization games and stuff. This does a great job. I love this game so much. It just missed out on #1 by this much, but this is definitely my most played app, and it is a big game. So again, I played hundreds of times, and that just shows how much easier it makes it to play this game, where I will play this big beefy game in relatively short order and kind of replay it over and over again, which is awesome to have a big crunchy kind of Euro card game in this digital format. It works really well, and I highly recommend it. But there's one app that I recommend above all else, and it is Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars is a great digital version of the game, so much so that it's not that I will never play Terraforming Mars physically again, but they do have Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which is a little bit easier and breezier to play physically, and I have this amazing app. There's not a lot of room to play Terraforming Mars in real life. I'd just rather play on the app. And the reason is, it's another big crunchy game similar to like Through the Ages that puts it into a really kind of easy to understand. You can click on every card, which gives you really clear instructions on how they work, what kind of parameters are needed to play it. It makes that all really easy. And this game and the app in particular does a fantastic job with feeling very atmospheric. It does such a good job of kind of enhancing the thematics of the game, because in this game you're terraforming a planet, and the whole aesthetic of the app is kind of semi-neon in certain areas, kind of just sci-fi vibes. They have this wonderful kind of sound design where there's this sort of music that plays underneath it, and it just fits the idea of kind of space exploration, semi-futuristic, and kind of low-key music that kind of rides underneath it in a way that doesn't become annoying, which is like, you know, oftentimes in other things, if it kind of gets repetitive, you'll mute it. I don't mind in Terraforming Mars. And then the sound design of when one of your types of productions is increased, it makes this kind of futuristic kind of beeping sound and stuff, but it's got this just great kind of echo, almost ethereal nature to all of it that is really fantastic and enhances to me the enjoyment of the game and drives home the kind of thematic experience of what that game is, of terraforming this planet. You see these greenery tiles literally bloom in front of you as they grow out, and you have all these kind of sounds that accompany it. And I think it's super cool. You see the dome, the city drop down, and a dome go over it, and you're in kind of this dome city, and it really reinforces what's happening. The oceans have motion to them and things like that. So it's something that for me is really extra cool, because normally that's theater of the mind stuff when you're playing the game. You just see these kind of tiles on the ground. Now they have the 3D version, of course, which enhances the game. But this does it in 3D and adds motion and stuff like that, and takes a big game, makes it easy to play. You can toggle on the Hellas and Elysium map if you want. You can toggle on Prelude and leave that toggled on, because you should never play Terraforming Mars without Prelude. That'd be insane. And it just is a complete package. I'm so excited for the various expansions to come out on this, because then I can toggle on certain ones and toggle them off, where in real life, again, I've got to separate a lot of cards out. I've got to do a lot of management. I have to, you know, do so many things just to get that game ready to play with any and all of the expansions. Or I can just click a button, turn it on, it takes care of everything else for me, or tick it off if I don't want to deal with it. That is going to be so great. So this game is, to me, the best complete package app game. It is easy to use. It's understandable. The design of it all enhances the thematic experience of the game. It knocked it out. It's 10 out of 10 for me, and that's why it's my #1 on my list. Now, of course, there are many more board game apps out there. There's many more that I play and enjoy that I think are fantastic. Some are a little bit more polished than others, and some of them didn't quite make the list due to little things that are frustrating or whatever for me, but they're still very playable. So I want to know from you, what board game apps am I missing? Let me know. There's plenty more that I play and do enjoy, and there's plenty more that I have not tried and want to. So holler at your boy. Let me know. What you've seen down here beneath me as I've been talking about this is all of our patrons. Please, if you have a couple extra dollars and want to support what we do, it really helps us out. It helps keep us in this space to record in, for one. Consider becoming a patron today. You can visit our Patreon. There should be a card or the description of this video, or both. You can click on both. They'll take you to the same spot. Thank you to all of our patrons. Again, I'm Mike Murphy. Nick is out of the studio for the moment, but he'll be right back. That is my 10 favorite board game apps, one of which I'm going to play right after this. And we'll see you next time, you know? I'm already distracted because I'm on the phone now. Hello?
All right, so check this out. We are so lucky to have our sponsors this year. We've got Lucky Duck Games, Board Game Geek, and of course the OG Restoration Games. Now, we love all of them. You should check each and every one of them out. I'll bet you checked Board Game Geek today, you filthy sweet animal. Love you so much. But we also have a month sponsor, and this month's sponsor is sponsored by the Thorson family. Now, Thorson sounds a lot like Thor's son. You can't disprove that there are not Viking god people walking among us today. That's the story that I'm sticking to. So thank you for being a September sponsor. May you keep the lightning and thunder ever in our hearts. Make sure you check out some other videos from us. If you're new to us, please consider subscribing. And if you are a return customer, thank you so much. We love you so much.